Okay, Krishna book, chapter 31, songs by the gopis. One gopi said, "My dear Krishna, ever since you took your birth in this land of Vrajbhumi, everything appears to be glorious. The land of Vrindavan has become glorious, and it is as if the goddess of fortune is personally always existing here. But it is only we who are very unhappy because we are searching for you, but cannot see you with our greatest effort. Our life is completely dependent upon you. Therefore, we request you that you come again to us." Another gopi said, "My dear Krishna, you are the life and soul even of the lotus flower that grows on the water of lakes, made transparent by the clear rains of autumn. Although the lotus flowers are so beautiful, without your glance, they fade away. Similarly, without you, we are also dying. Actually, we are not your wives, but are your slaves. You are never spent any money for us, yet we are simply attracted by your glance. Now, if we die without receiving your glance, you will be responsible for our deaths. Certainly, the killing of women is a great sin, and if you do not come to see us and we die, you will suffer the reactions of sin. So please come see us. Do not think that one can be killed only by certain weapons. We are being killed by your absence. You should consider how you are responsible for killing women. We are always grateful to you because you have protected us many times from the poisonous water of the Yamuna, from the serpent Kaliya, from Bakasura, from the anger of Indra and his torrents of rain, from the forest fire and so many other incidents. You are the greatest and most powerful of all. It is wonderful for you to protect us from so many dangers, but we are surprised that you are neglecting us at this moment. Dear Krishna, dear friend, we know very well that you are not actually the son of Mother Yashoda or the cowherd man Nanda Maharaj. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the Supersoul of all living entities. You have, out of your own causeless mercy, appeared in this world, requested by Lord Brahma for the protection of the world. It is by your kindness only that you have appeared in the dynasty of Yadu. O best in the dynasty of Yadu, if anyone afraid of this materialistic way of life takes shelter at your lotus feet, you never deny him protection. Your movements are sweet, and you are independent, touching the goddess of fortune with one hand and in the other bearing a lotus flower. That is your extraordinary feature. Please, therefore, come before us and bless us with the lotus flower in your hand. Dear Krishna, Dear Krishna, you are the killer of all the fears of the inhabitants of Vrindavan. You are the supremely powerful hero, and we know that you can kill the unnecessary pride of your devotees, as well as the pride of women like us, simply by your beautiful smile. We are simply your maidservants and slaves. Please, therefore, accept us by showing us your beautiful lotus-like face. Dear Krishna, actually we have become very lusty, having been touched by your lotus feet. Your lotus feet certainly kill all kinds of sinful activities of devotees who have taken shelter there. You are so kind that even the ordinary animals take shelter under your lotus feet. Your lotus feet are also the residence of the goddess of fortune. Yet you dance on the heads of Kaliya, the Kaliya serpent with them. Now we are requesting you to kindly place your lotus feet on our breasts and pacify our lusty desires to touch you. O Lord, your attractive eyes, like the lotus, are so nice and pleasing. Your sweet words are so fascinating that they please even the greatest scholars, who also become attracted to you. We are also attracted by your speaking and by the beauty of your face and eyes. Please, therefore, satisfy us by your nectarian kisses. Dear Lord, words spoken by you or words describing your activities are full of nectar, and simply by speaking or hearing your words, one can be saved from the blazing fire of material existence. Great demigods like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva are always engaged in chanting the glories of your words. They do so to eradicate the sinful activities of all living entities in the material world. If one simply tries to hear your transcendental words, he can very quickly be elevated to the platform of pious activities. For the Vaishnavas, your words give transcendental pleasure, and saintly persons who are engaged in distributing your transcendental message all over the world are first-class charitable persons. This was confirmed by Rupa Goswami when he addressed Lord Chaitanya as the most munificent incarnation, because he distributed the words of Krishna and love of Krishna free of charge all over the world. Dear Krishna, the gopis continued, you are very cunning. You can imagine how much we are distressed simply by remembering your cunning smile, your pleasing glance, your walking with us in the forest of Vrindavan, and your auspicious meditations. Your talks with us in lonely places were heartwarming. Now we are all aggrieved to remember your behavior. Please save us. Dear Krishna, certainly you know how much we are saddened when you go out of Vrindavan village to tend the cows in the forest. How we are afflicted simply to think that your soft lotus feet are being pricked by the dry grass and the tiny stones in the forest. We are so attached to you that we always think simply of your lotus feet. O Krishna, when you return from the pasturing ground with the animals, we see your face covered by your curly hair and dusted by the hoof dust of the cows. We see your mildly smiling face, and our desire to enjoy you increases. O dear Krishna, you are the supreme lover, and you always give shelter to surrendered souls. You fulfill everyone's desire. Your lotus feet are worshipped even by Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe. On whoever worships your lotus feet, you without a doubt always bestow your benedictions. So kindly be pleased with us and keep your lotus feet on our breasts and thus relieve our present distresses. Dear Krishna, we are seeking your kisses, which you offer even to your flute. The vibration of your flute enchants the whole world and our hearts also. Kindly, therefore, return and kiss us with your mouth of nectar. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 31st chapter of Krishna, Songs by the Gopis. Prabhupada ki jai.
Om Jnana-timirantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadhati Swapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jutapadakamalaṁ Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Pancha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This chapter presents the Gopi Gita, sung by the gopis in Krishna's absence. There, as we read in the previous chapter, they were wandering around in the forest like mad women, imitating Krishna's pastimes and just talking about Krishna, inquiring from the forest plants and creatures about Krishna. And here they're singing the glories of Krishna. And ardently asking for his return and glorifying him. The land of Braja is glorious because of your presence there, presence here. But we're unhappy because we can't, we're searching for you, but we can't find you. They express their dependence on Krishna, and they say, killing of women is a great sin. If you don't come see us and we die, then that won't be good for you. So you should consider this. In many ways, and they say you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Super Soul. You've appeared by the request of Brahma, and you're not actually the son of Mother Yashoda or Nanda Maharaj. You're the personality of Godhead. And if anyone takes shelter of your lotus feet, you always protect him. So you're independent. You touch the goddess of fortune with one hand and hold a lotus flower in the other. So now please come with the lotus flower in your hand and give us your blessings. We're just your maidservants, so you should come and accept us. Even you kill all the sinful activities of devotees who take shelter of your lotus feet. Your eyes are so pleasing, your words are so fascinating, the beauty of your face and eyes. So they, requesting Krishna, please come embrace us, please come kiss us. very significantly, if one simply tries to hear your transcendental words, you can very quickly be elevated to the platform of pious activities. Thank you. Hare Krishna. For the Vaishnavas, your words give transcendental pleasure, and saintly persons engaged in distributing your transcendental message all over the world are the first-class charitable persons. We can recall that Prataparudra Maharaj was reciting these verses when he dressed himself as an ordinary man in order to get the association of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became particularly ecstatic hearing this verse. So in this way, interestingly, the chapter ends a little short. There are more verses in the Bhagavatam chapter than in the Krishna book. My guess is that perhaps a tape was lost. It wouldn't be characteristic of Srila Prabhupada just to skip a portion. So my guess is that perhaps a tape was lost at some point. The tape was lost or the transcription was lost, something of that nature, some production problem. Otherwise, certainly, Srila Prabhupada would have rendered the whole chapter. All right, are there some questions, comments? Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Why do we sing the Gopi Gita in Kartik after the Madharashtak? What is the
Why do we
reason?
sing the Gopi Gita after the Damodarashtakam prayers in Kartik? I have no idea. During Srila Prabhupada's time, we never did, and he never asked us to do so. And even for many, many years after Prabhupada's time, we never chanted the Gopi Gita during Kartik. It seems to have started in Vrindavan, and now from Vrindavan, people come to Vrindavan and they pick it up and they think, well, this is what we're supposed to do. Anything done in Vrindavan, that is ISKCON Vrindavan, people think, well, it must be authorized. It must be what we're supposed to do. Although Vrindavan is full of all the craziest things in this kind sometimes. Anyway, Prabhupada didn't ask us to chant the Gopi Gita, and we never heard him chant Gopi Gita. Not that one can't. We've heard Bhakti Maharaj chant Gopi Gita very sweetly, and it's certainly among the authorized in Srimad Bhagavatam, so it's a perfect prayer, and it's chanted by the greatest devotees, the gopis. But why should we select this prayer? First of all, why Kartik? There's so many prayers by Bhishma Dev, who left this world at the end of Kartik, prayers by Akrura, prayers by Arjuna, prayers by Vritrasura. There's so many. Bhagavatam is full of prayers by Brahma. But why we selected these prayers for chanting during Kartik? So, and they're quite intimate, confidential prayers. Out of so many prayers one could chant, why have we gone immediately to Gopi Gita? I don't know. And Prabhupada himself, if he were here, might ask the same question.
Hare Krishna.
And then these things become institutionalized, and everybody thinks, well, this is what we've always done. They think this is what you're supposed to do. But that's what you thought, right? This is what we do. It's like, but it's not an instruction that we ever got from Srila Prabhupada. Mm-hmm.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, just to follow up on this, what did you do during Kartik with Prabhupada?
What did we do when Srila Prabhupada was here during Kartik? We chanted Damodarashtakam. That's what Prabhupada asked us to chant during Kartik. We offered lamps. This is the standard prescribed in our books. And it's what Prabhupada taught us, that during the month of Kartik, one should daily offer a lamp to the Lord and chant this Damodarashtakam. If I remember, in some temples we used to do it morning and evening, but in any case, at least in the evening we would, or in the morning, if there was book distribution before we go out and chant this. But that's what Prabhupada prescribed, and that's the standard. That's for Kartik. This Damodarashtakam is chanted. That's the main thing we did. Some devotees accepted a little more austerity. During Kartik, one might observe one vow or another. Chaturmasya, generally Prabhupada didn't very much. Sometimes he appreciated. I remember one time Bhavananda was strictly following Chaturmasya. Prabhupada approved. But generally, Prabhupada would see devotees growing their beards during, for Chaturmasya. And they take the vow not to shave. And Prabhupada just said, Chatur mess. There are so many strict vows, but what vow does one take to grow my beard? And Prabhupada always associated beards with hippies and, sort of, what's the word? Uncontrolled people or uncultured barbarians and so on. Prabhupada didn't at all appreciate beards. In fact, I think he used the word in the Bhagavatam purport, objectionable. He considered beards objectionable. So during Prabhupada's time, most of his devotees were clean shaven. Our Hayagriva Prabhu, Professor Hayagriva, he was sometimes having a beard, and Prabhupada would, I think sometimes, needle him about it or say something about it. And one time, because he was a member of the GBC sometimes, or he was a leading devotee, and one time he met Prabhupada in Europe, and he'd shaved his head. He was keeping a full head of hair and beard, and he met Prabhupada, and he just he kind of like a surprise, he'd shaved his head, but he kept his beard. And Prabhupada said, "You look like a Muslim." Maybe hardly anyone had beards in Prabhupada's time. And for Chaturmasya, Prabhupada didn't think much of it. So the main thing, although I was just reading that our Indra Prabhu used to very strictly follow Chaturmasya, not just growing his beard and so on, but just eating khichdi once a day from the floor, and serious tapasya. But for the most part, Prabhupada wanted to see that we were engaged in service. That was his. He didn't ask us to do anything terribly extraordinary for Kartik. His servants, those who were, they didn't do any big thing for Kartik. There was no movement-wide, now just Damodarashtakam. And offering lamps to the deity. Thinking if there's anything else. No. But it's the month of Kartik is glorified in Shastra, and there's all sorts of, if you get into Hari Bhakti Vilas or other places, I'm sure you can find all sorts of things that you're supposed to do during Kartik. Prabhupada used to sort of give a summary of all these things, fast days and this and that. We should increase our hearing and chanting. And increase our hearing and chanting. Yes.
As I remember, Prabhupada established that during Chaturmasya we should do the Bhakti Shastri. Like when I did the Bhakti Shastri here, Prashanta Mataji said that Prabhupada established the Bhakti Shastri and he requested Purijan Prabhu to make it in a way that it should be during Chaturmasya. That's what I remember.
For
that you said.
Chaturmasya? I don't remember that. Prabhupada certainly wanted this Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav. Just that you have BA, MA, PhD. So Prabhupada he didn't care much about BA, MA, PhD, but he wanted us to have our own qualifications, that these degrees should be recognized, Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti Vaibhav, Bhakti, Vedanta, Bhakti Sarvabhauma, Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam. So he wanted that very much. I don't remember anything particular about Chaturmasya. Could be. Even during Prabhupada's time, there wasn't a big influx of devotees here in Vrindavan. Devotees would mostly come during the Gaur Purnima festival. We would first go to, different years they did it different ways. First Vrindavan, then Mayapur, first Mayapur, then Vrindavan. They tried, different ways of doing it. That's when most devotees would come. But after some time, I think more after Prabhupada's disappearance, Kartik gradually grew. So many devotees come. Now it's all chock-a-block, so many devotees come during Kartik. Prabhupada himself came during Kartik. It was announced that Prabhupada would give daily lectures on Nectar of Devotion at Radha Damodar temple. Before this temple was even opened. I wasn't there, but it was announced that Prabhupada would give classes on Nectar of Devotion. And I think devotees were expecting perhaps that Prabhupada would really be, diving into the Vrindavan nectar. In fact, he started from the very beginning of Nectar of Devotion and gradually went on. And basically the first portion of Nectar of Devotion. Very important book, Nectar of Devotion. So Prabhupada was lecturing on that. So that's like a suitable program for Kartik, hearing, reading books like Nectar of Devotion and so on. But Prabhupada, for the most part, continue your service. That's what Prabhupada had us doing. And if you can add some extra, that's very good. Now many devotees do come Kartik and they experience rejuvenation of in their devotional service. They attend seminars and retreats in Govardhan or programs here. So it's wonderful. I'm sure if we look in Shastras, we'll find many things about the month of Kartik. Including, guarantees of material prosperity and so on, which is not our interest. Someplace Prabhupada said that these things are like a sale, where there's, during Christmas or some Thanksgiving, or in the Middle East, Ramadan, there'll be all sorts of sales, 50% off, whatever. And purpose is to attract customers. So Prabhupada said, those who are already customers, they'll already buy. So the devotees, they'll already hear and chant the glories of Krishna. But those who are not devotees may be induced that if you do some devotional service during Kartik, you'll get to be promoted to the heavenly planets, or you'll get a beautiful wife in your next life, or you'll become a rich man, or whatever. They think this is great. But the real purpose is to attract them to devotional service. Something else?
Coming back to the text, I was wondering, we have seen now in various chapters already that the gopis see that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Does that not block their Madhurya Ras?
In various places in the text, the gopis acknowledge that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And does that interfere with their Madhurya Ras? Well, first thing we'd have to do would be to look at the text and see whether it's the gopis that are acknowledging that, or whether it's Prabhupada who's adding it to the text along the lines of, my dear Lord, as you say in Bhagavad-Gita. So sometimes it may be one, or sometimes it may be the other. But where in fact they're addressing him, let's look at one verse where they really do that. Well, let me switch from here to there. Just looking at the translations in the chapter. One place doesn't seem that there's much here in the way of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the direct translations in the Bhagavatam. So it may be that Prabhupada's writing it in, or translating words like Achyuta, or different names of Krishna. Achyuta. Just like Indian people, they have all sorts of names of Krishna, but no one thinks they're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They may be, So, but it sometimes happens, the residents of Vrindavan address Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Perhaps it's even in prayers here where I'm not seeing it. But it doesn't get in the way. Because Yogamaya adjusts things. They're able to, at one moment, they're able to address him as Bhagavan or by some other term indicating or extolling his glories. They do say, Brahma prayed for you to appear. But we see they adjust these things. They think, yes, Krishna must be a great demigod. Or they think in some other way, just as Varuna was honoring Krishna and Nandamar thought, because he's such a nice boy. So Varuna's praising him and telling Nandamar is telling the inhabitants of Vrindavan, Varuna showed such respect to Krishna. So somehow they adjust it by Yogamaya's influence. So even Yashodamaya, she's seeing everything in Krishna's mouth. And then, all right, enough of your nonsense.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So Krishna says devotional service should be joyfully performed. And he also says that Brahmins shouldn't give distress to others.
Shouldn't?
Give distress. But here we see that Krishna puts the gopis in such anxiety by not being present before them. And, even the prayers of Queen Kunti, Krishna mainly appears when the devotees are in distress. I guess, I don't know, it's really hard because it means kind of only when we're really struggling, then we really receive, Krishna's mercy. And that can be quite difficult. So I just thought maybe you could comment on this.
Yeah. Yasman nod vijate loko lokan nod vijate chaya. Harsha marsha bhayod vegar suyukta sasukina. A devotee shouldn't agitate anyone else and shouldn't be agitated by anyone else. He doesn't want to put others in distress. Of course, Krishna is not subject to any of the rules concerning Brahmins and devotees and all that. He can do what he likes. He's not subject to any such restrictions. Apart from that, that's basically on the moral and material platform. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Thou shalt do this, thou shalt do that. These are moral codes. If Krishna were to be following moral codes, he wouldn't be there with the gopis to begin with. So Vrindavan is all, Krishna's Vrindavan pastimes are transcendental to all moral injunctions and rules and rituals and all of those things. And the real purpose is to increase their love for him. In one sense, they're not being put into distress, they're being put into the highest ecstasy. The Sanatana Goswami discusses this in Brihad Bhagavatamrita. That he says that generally people think that Krishna put the gopis in distress, or that the devotees are put into separation, because the separation increases their joy when they meet Krishna. But Sanatana Goswami says, no, actually the ecstasy felt in separation itself is the highest expression of ecstasy, the highest experience of ecstasy. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was tasting ecstasy in the wood of separation, because that's the highest. So Krishna wasn't putting his devotees into actual misery. He was putting them into transcendental bliss. But not, we think of bliss as, bright smiles and sunshine. But the actual platform of bliss is different. It's full of all sorts of ins and outs. Srila B.R. Sridhar Maharaj was fond of quoting a verse that says that the dealings of love are crooked like a snake. So So Krishna's he's known as crooked. He stands crooked. He's known to be a crooked person. But apart from that, he performs these pastimes in these different ways to bring out, to heighten the transcendental experience of loving dealings. I think I mentioned in some class previously how during Prabhupada's last days this controversy was going on about Prabhupada going on the bullock cart ride to Govardhan, circumambulating Govardhan, and came to the point where devotees were at war with one another about whether Prabhupada should go. And then when the whole thing was finally settled and Prabhupada decided not to go, Bhavananda said that Prabhupada, you put us into such anxiety. And paraphrasing it, you just put us into such anxiety out of love for you. And Prabhupada said, that is my duty, to increase the pitch of love. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I have a comment and a question. The comment is that it seems like even Krishna is not immune from the mood of separation, because we see him in the Bhagavad-Gita towards the end when he's in the palace in Dwarka, that he's surrounded by his close associates, and he's practically speaking crying because he remembers the times when he was in Vrindavan. So he's not immune from it. From the Krishna book, we don't see this aspect. It seems like that he's always in control. But when he gets to Dwarka, we see the other side that also he, as I said, is not immune from that aspect.
Thank you for that. The Bhagavad-Gita is a very wonderful book. And the devotees can read it and appreciate these wonderful dealings of Krishna.
And my question is, this is purely on an historical kind of interest. There was a time when there was an issue arose in the history of ISKCON in regards to the so-called Gopi Baba Club. Now, the 10th canto was not finished at the time, but the Krishna book was probably
10th canto, I don't think 10th canto hadn't been started at that time.
So, but the Krishna book was available now.
And Chaitanya Charitamrita, I think, was available.
So this group of devotees were reading from the Krishna book or from other books?
Only from Prabhupada's books.
Only from Prabhupada's books, okay.
Yeah, there weren't that many books available outside yet, I think. Not the profusion of books that we have now, and profusion of, Upper books. High topics. And in any case, the tendency wasn't very, especially when Prabhupada was there, we weren't encouraged to be wandering around collecting books, and especially not books of Raskatha and so on. So they weren't reading anything other than Prabhupada's books. But they'd read in Chaitanya Charitamrita that one shouldn't divert one's mind to anything else but the conjugal pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And, they were like shooting for the top. This is the highest relationship with Krishna is conjugal ras. And as stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, one should immerse one's mind in these topics. And there's I remember, and not divert our minds to anything else. So that's what they were doing. They were in Los Angeles, and they would get together a little privately. It wasn't one of those after Mangalarti announcements, but a little privately, confidentially, they would get together and they would relish and taste these different verses and purports selected from, especially I think Chaitanya Charitamrita, maybe also from Krishna book. And this is what they were doing. And really focusing intently on, with a desire to achieve these higher objectives. And Srila Prabhupada was disturbed, and at first disturbed and then angry that this was going on. The account, I think, is given in several places, especially in Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. I think you can find the history. And Prabhupada said that instead of being purified by focusing on these topics, they would become putrefied. Instead of purified, they would become putrefied. And there was some point where he heard, or they said, because I believe they were summoned to, meet Prabhupada. And at some point they said that they didn't, some comment was made to the effect that they didn't want to divert their minds to the lower rasas, to Nanda, Yashoda, and Krishna, and so on. Prabhupada was like, infuriated. There was a sign, Prabhupada, but his lips would quiver. It was like, that means he was really controlling great anger. So he was angry, that somehow or other Yashoda and Krishna, that's considered inferior. That's considered inferior. We only want the superior. Prabhupada saw that as materialistic vision. And contrary to what he was teaching. Prabhupada said that a pure devotee doesn't reject even a drop of Srimad Bhagavatam. We hear that Lord Chaitanya used to relish hearing Dhruva Charitra, Prahlad, topics of Prahlad, topics of Dhruva. Not that even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu only heard these Radha Krishna topics. Of course, in the Gambhira with Swarup Damodar, that's again only 3.5 associates, and most confidentially. But otherwise, he was hearing all these other topics also. And certainly Srila Prabhupada himself, if you look at what he chanted, apart from Hare Krishna, we have 2 tapes of his chanting from Srimad Bhagavatam, prayers from Srimad Bhagavatam. One is the prayers of Kunti. These tapes are still available. Tapes, now they're of course files. but they were originally tapes. One is prayers of Queen Kunti, and the other is the prayers of Sukadeva Goswami from second canto. And you can hear Srila Prabhupada chanting them with great ecstasy. With great ecstasy. So again, why we've instituted Kopi Gita as the official Kartik song in Vrindavan, I don't know. And the same Prabhupada who was so angry about the Gopi Baba Club, I don't know what he would say about Kopi Gita and Kartik, whether he'd approve or disapprove. I'd offer maybe an educated guess, but don't want to impose my views on the matter. But we didn't see that Prabhupada would, just in the evenings, call the devotees together and sing prayers from the gopis, or even from 10th canto. That wasn't part of his program. In the afternoons in Los Angeles, he used to sit in his garden and he'd hear Krishna book. But not just these 5 chapters, all the chapters. Gopi Baba Club. It was quite a warning for the devotees. And Prabhupada was concerned that this is how things go in the direction of the Sahaja tendency. Sahaja means cheap and easy. Prakrita Sahaja. Prabhupada translated it one place as mundane cheaps. Prakrita Sahajas are mundane cheaps. Prakrita means mundane. Sahaja means cheap and easy. So Prabhupada was very much concerned that we not get drawn into this idea that we should just focus on these things. That's also, I think, where Prabhupada expressed this, what later became like a slogan: first desire, first deserve, and then desire. These days we hear a lot about lobha, how we have to develop lobha, greed, anxiety, greed. And it's true. It's not, I don't want to discount it. We want to develop a greed for hearing about Krishna, serving Krishna. But that greed in the, what shall we say, probationary stage is especially manifest by greed to serve the spiritual master. Not that I'm just greedy to relish, but I'm not very interested in serving. And I sort of neither here nor there about the regulative principles.
But there's also a worrying part that's happening now here in Vrindavan. There's a lot of ex-ISKCON devotees that are kind of migrating to so-called like greener pastures. They go to places to hear katha where they don't worship Mahaprabhu, and neither the Goswamis. And that's the scary part. How can it be possible to have such a level of disloyalty towards Lord Chaitanya? Not, going to places where they don't even recognize him.
What we see in many places is that devotees really haven't learned the science of Krishna consciousness. They haven't studied the literature, or they're really deep into the literature, but they're not trained in devotional service under proper guidance. In Prabhupada's presence, we were quite trained in these things. I was mentioning earlier in the day in another meeting, Prabhupada would see, he'd be here in Vrindavan, he'd see someone with gray tilak. Where have they been? Who gave them permission to go? Who are they hearing from? Call them in. Call the GBC. You know, Prabhupada was very protective and very concerned that, especially he considered this association of the Radhakund Babaji's very dangerous, and others also. In Vrindavan, so much is there, you know, it's like a bazaar. Everything's available, especially these days. And it's especially, there are those who are, you know, this is, they have their path, they have their bhajan, they have their whatever it is that they're committed to. Plus, these days, there's a lot of resource hunters. You know, ISKCON has devotees who have money, who have resources, and so there are so many people, from shopkeepers to, what would you say, to Babajis, to anything, who see that there's, they've got their eye on the gold. Or really unscrupulously, they see there's nice foreign women, and you know, that motivation is also there. So the presence of especially foreign devotees or less experienced devotees, even from India, becomes like a business opportunity or an exploitation opportunity for various parties in Vrindavan. And we tend to be naive about these things. We're just wandering around like little butterflies looking for nectar and not really aware of some of the games that are being played. Prabhupada, of course, knew them all, knew of them all. But devotees, so you get foreign devotees who just don't know better or they're never trained. And these days you get a lot of Indian devotees who, you know, they're not really all that trained sometimes. Many, of course, are, you know, super excellently trained or, you know, conversant, learned, dedicated. But there's so many, they're just, what would you say? They've learned about Krishna consciousness from their family, from being in Indian, you know. So they listen to Krishna bhajans from here, there, and everywhere. When there's a big, famous Katankar, Bhagavatam reciter in Delhi or whatever, they all go, you know, to hear the big name Bhagavat reciter, and they're big names because they're so entertaining. They're so, you know, you get this kind of piety and entertainment and nectar and all of that. But they're not, they don't have the Shakti of the Sampradaic authority, or as you said, of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Sanatana Goswami has warned us, Avaishnava Mukod Girinam Putam Harikatamritam Shravana Naiva Kartavya Sarpochishta Yatapaya. Don't hear from them. If they're not Vaishnava, and so many of them, you know, if you come this week, they'll be speaking about something from Bhagavatam. If you go next week, it'll be Devi Mahatmya. If you go next week, it'll be the Shiv Puran. They don't have that kind of commitment. They're like shopkeepers, whatever's, everything's in stock. And then you have bhajan singers, pop bhajan singers or classical bhajan singers. And they're basically entertainers. Their songs may be devotional and they may be highly cultured, musically sophisticated, but they're not generally practicing the principles of pure devotional service. And we know some of these people because in Bombay we're well connected with the entertainment industry. So we know that some of these big names among the bhajan singers are they drink, they're woman hunters, they're sense gratifiers, and they chant Krishna bhajans, It's such a beautiful voice. So our Indian devotees who are not well trained, basically they're householders and they've taken to Krishna consciousness and they probably chant 16 rounds and maybe follow 4 regulative principles, but they're not all that conversant, they're sort of living their own life, and to a greater or lesser extent, they've taken up the principles of this Krishna consciousness movement, but they may not be very well trained. They've never lived in a temple. They've never sort of undergone that kind of discipline. They're just sort of added Krishna consciousness to their already existing life. And either they've never heard that you shouldn't go hear from these people, or they've heard it, but they think, but it's so beautiful, or why shouldn't I hear it? They're chanting about Krishna, they're speaking about Krishna. Why should, they think maybe this is some sort of institutional game we're playing, just to keep them in ISKCON. We don't want them to go anyplace else. So they think, why should we be restricted in that way? And so we find many, if you go to one of these professional recitations, you'll find so many ISKCON Walas there. So it may not express, just rebellion or disloyalty. It just, they don't really know what they're doing. Not properly trained. I remember we went with a group of young people one time to some glacier. We were on a tour and we went to some glacier up in northern United States. And it was very clearly marked that, there's a part that was marked off with a rope, don't go here. And there was a whole discussion of hypothermia, how, you fall in the cracks, and the cracks can be anywhere or develop anywhere. You fall down there and there's basically nothing we can do for you because within minutes you'll be an icicle and you won't be retrievable. So don't go here. And of course all the kids went immediately. So sometimes people just don't listen. Sometimes they never even hear these things. Or sometimes they are conversant and they think that there must be something higher here. One of Prabhupada's own associates from his traveling, who was traveling with him as a Sanskrit editor, became attracted to something outside and left Prabhupada's service and wrote Prabhupada a letter that, I'll always be grateful to you for getting me started on the path of Krishna consciousness. And now we're going onward for higher studies to hear from someone who was quite opposed to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So, Mama Maya Dhiratyaya. In the Kathopanishad, it said that the path of realization is like a razor's edge. And Prabhupada's like when you shave, he said, those of us who shave, Prabhupada said, there's little inattention and you can draw blood. Everything's going nicely, but a little inattention and you draw blood. So Krishna consciousness, it's easy, it's sublime, it's all of these things. But if we're not very careful, if we don't follow carefully the directions of the Acharya, the spiritual master, we can get in trouble. We can be misled. We can run into serious difficulties in our spiritual life and think that we're making great progress. So Prabhupada, when present, detected that in this Gopi Bhav Club, and he was careful that we should hear from the devotees. Even he wrote to the temple president of New York that I'm sitting here in Vrindavan. This was again 1977 maybe. I'm sitting here in Vrindavan, and in the evening I'm hearing how they're giving class. He said, so as I'm hearing, you should also hear. Not that I only hear when there's an all-star person giving class. He said, as I'm hearing, you should also hear. He said, don't try to be a greater Paramhansa than your Guru Maharaj. These days we see that people are eager to hear from different bhajan singers and learn, how they do bhajan. And we hear that someone was telling me that they were at various festivals and the kirtan singers were practicing their alaps. That's the term that they're using, I think, these days, practicing their alaps. Alap, I think the term is being misused, actually. Alap is the slow, exploratory portion of a raga performance in classical Indian music, in which the singer will do all these. So the alaps aren't the decorative or exploratory melodies themselves. It's that whole portion. But anyway, devotees, go to classical or other sources and learn these things. In Prabhupada's time, we never did that. We weren't advised to hear from the non-devotees and to copy their methods of singing. Just Prabhupada encouraged us to sing with devotion, and basically to keep it simple. So many things come later. Gopi-Gita. So many things. Which isn't to say that there's not more that we can read. There are, Prabhupada encourages us in Bhagavatam that we should read from other commentaries. So it's not wrong, but we should be careful and we should be properly guided. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I was just wondering, this gullibility of going to this different sampradayas, different babajis, and different so-called entertainer. It just come from the fact because we the Indians born in India, we have natural tendency to respect anyone like who has desire to serve or doing something for Krishna consciousness or doing something
Yeah, people don't know. It's not that India, being born in India gives a tremendous opportunity. India's Punya Bhumi. Everybody knows about Krishna. Everybody knows about Ram. Everybody's half the population's named after Krishna, or so many pastimes of Krishna are just common currency in India. So India's, and so many things about India are pious, and spiritual culture is there. It may be not fully manifest or properly manifest. Prabhupada said, dead or alive, an elephant is worth a lakh.
It's like they're half-baked.
Yeah, half-baked. You see that people, that again, they have a natural tendency towards spiritual life. It's easy to get people involved. People in America, you try to make a member of Congress a devotee, it's like, forget it. But if you go to Delhi and you say you're from ISKCON, you can meet most of the members of parliament, and they'll be very respectful. And at one time I had some business with the chief of police in Krishna district in Andhra Pradesh. I had some visa work, and so I was talking with him. And in the course of talking, I quoted the Bhagavad-Gita verse. He quoted the next 5. And he was the police chief. He's not, a Brahmin. He's not a sadhu. He's the chief police officer, and he's knowing Bhagavad-Gita. So India gives you such advantages, but one needs to be trained. Acharya Upasanam. One has to come under the discipline and training of the Acharya. Otherwise, one has kind of a, what would we say, generic, sentimental attraction, but hasn't really taken up the proper studies. Like living in a university town, there'll be a kind of there'll be learned people all over the place, but just because you live in the town doesn't mean that you're going to the university. Maybe crude example. But so you find, like here in Vrindavan, you find on an Ekadashi or a weekend or almost any opportunity, so many people. The New Year's Day, people came in droves to be here in Vrindavan. They could have gone anywhere, but because they're pious, they come to Vrindavan. But then what do when they come to Vrindavan? They come to the temple, they take selfies of themselves with the deities, they dance in the courtyard while someone's making a movie of them and their family. They get the little kids who put Radhe Radhe on their foreheads and give them, now the latest is this red tilak with the, and they have no idea that this is just, a money-making gimmick that's come up in the last couple of years. They think they're doing something very spiritual. They just don't know better. They tend to be indiscriminate. You go to South India, and I remember when I was down in 1985, 86 on Padayatra, and I'd never been to South India, and we'd all heard that South India is where people are very traditional and strict, and they still follow so many rituals and so on. And it was all true. At the same time, there were so many fools who were worshiping some Babaji as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Some magician as the Supreme and big people, educated people, they're worshiping some cheap imitation God, despite their culture and their learning and their traditions and all of that. Despite all the Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Vishnu Swami Acharya, they were all coming from South India. These people are getting cheated by a cheap musician. In fact, my godbrother P.R. Mohan, who was here last week for a day, he's also coming back. He makes a little money for his household expenses by doing magic for children's shows and so on like that. We saw some film clips of this incarnation of God doing wonderful miracles. He said he's not even a good magician. So you can see how the tricks are being done. So people are, on one side, very fortunate, very pious. Then on the other side, gullible, untrained, sentimental. So our Krishna consciousness movement means to train people. When they come forward to be serious, everyone can be sort of culturally dharmic or culturally Vaishnava even. But then if you want to be serious, to go back to Godhead, to, get free from the clutches of material energy, then we have to come under the guidance of the Acharya, Vijnanartam Sagurumeva Bhigacche, then be trained. And then we get the devotees, Indian devotees who do that. They come forward, they're trained, and then they know. And they're expert, and they preach, and they practice, and then they become wonderful. But they're different from the ordinary pious Indian who, just goes by sort of family tradition and current cultural, what he's picked up from his cultural surroundings.
Maharaj, most of the time when you go out for preaching and you meet all these people, they become like self-declared preacher or something. They have their own concocted philosophy, and you have to deal with them. It's like become, my God, I'm wrong, and they are the right, because the way they empowered you and dominate you with their philosophical ideas, which is no verified. I mean, it comes from unverified places.
Even in the 1960s, we had this at 26 Second Avenue. All the hippies were philosophers, They all had some philosophy. They all had their realizations, and they're all like stoned out of their minds and saying, "Well, actually, we're all, whatever." And they're the hardest people to work with because they think they know something. The person who knows he's ignorant is better off. So that's there in the West, it's there in India. And so we have to deal with that. On the one side, it's an advantage that people have this spiritual culture. But on the other side, if they want to get serious and really get the full benefit, then they have to take through the process under proper discipline.
Maharaj, time is short. Can I just interject one point?
Time is in fact up, but yes.
Yeah. I wanted to just talk about this aspect of austerity. You just mentioned that this austerity aspect. This austerity is meant to purify yourself, and you become more purer, so that your consciousness become more softened, and you can, whatever you're chanting or whatever you're doing, it becomes more, fruit giving, fast fruit giving. So in due course, it's up to you. You do it in your own capacity, in your own way. But more than that, as you mentioned, that it is meant to purify your consciousness, and whatever austerity we do in the Mangala Aarti and Japa and all that, and vows we take and all that, is meant to purify yourself, in a consciousness, and so that you can become more purer and chant nicely and become more good devotee.
Actually, these are the things. The most purifying methods are the direct limbs of bhakti. The hearing, the chanting, following the regulative principles. Austerity is less important. It may help us to some extent, and we accept austerity, jnana vairagya yuktaya. But finally, we're not about Gyan or Vairagya. We accept Gyan and Vairagya to the extent that they're favorable for devotional service. But the real thing is devotional service. Not for others, Gyan and Vairagya are the whole cake, But for the devotees, we accept some Gyan, some Vairagya, maybe some more, some less. But the most important thing is not Gyan or Vairagya, it's bhakti itself. And so it's time for kirtan. And who's leading the kirtan today?
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram 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 Hare Hare.
A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai, Nama Charja Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath, Sham Kund Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Navadip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Ki Jai, Gangamai Ki Jai, Jamanamai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.